Hey everyone, it's Gracie Uchley, and today I'm going to be discussing Chapter 7 in our textbook, Intercultural Communication, which discusses the understanding of American cultural values and exploring the fundamental orientations that shape the US's cultural identity through communication theory. So, first, the chapter discusses the value orientation framework. It identifies 5 different cultural problems that every society must address, and 5 problems that we address here in American culture as well. It is broken up between human nature orientation, activity orientation, human separate nature orientation, time, and relational orientation as well. Each 5 of these frameworks look at different problems that we run into, from building a culture to day-to-day life in the culture. Of course, we know in the US there are lots of different subcultures based on region, and each of those can work through this value orientation framework. So for America's human nature orientation, we know that we place a lot of faith in the scientific method for problem solving. We also believe that human life is more valuable or more important than animal life, which can be different in other cultures. And America also has high levels of materialism, meaning that we put a lot of value in our material possessions and technological advancement. For activity orientation, work is seen as an identity factor in Americans. They strongly identify themselves through their work and how hard they work, their career achievements, etc. We also are more positive leaning towards change. We are more open to change. And in the US, we view change as a good thing, as a positive thing, and as a sign of growth. We also have high important placement on efficiency, which I feel like ties into work as identity. Time management is valued, productivity is highly valued, getting things done is placed at high importance in our culture. Some core American values that we see in the textbook, like self-motivation, equality, conformity, and modern norms, are all values that the culture of the US as a whole seems to follow pretty strongly. Of course, we know there are regional and social variations within American culture. Our country is so large, and our country is one that is made up of immigrants, and they all bring their own set of cultural values and foundational beliefs into America and start their own subcultures here, which I think is pretty awesome. So while we do have an overarching culture here in America, there are regional differences and lots of different social class identities as well, which creates unique cultural patterns that we see based on region here. So for some discussion questions that I have outlined, first is based off of America's activity orientation. What can we observe about Americans' relationship with work and productivity? What do we see that is typical and common in US culture, as far as how much we work, how much value we place on work? What does that look like in relation to vacation time, personal time, family time, those parts of our lives that are separate from work? How do we value those factors in with how much we value work? For the second question, I ask, are social class divisions becoming more pronounced in the US, and what are the consequences of those? How do we see the divisions in various social classes in different parts of the US be more significant, be more prominent, and what are maybe some consequences that we see within those divisions? And lastly, for fundamental values, which value orientation do you feel like is most fundamental to American culture and why? Of course, all of them are important in their own ways, but the way I like to frame this question is, when you think of America, what value orientation comes to mind and why is that the first one that comes to mind for you? For me, personally, I'll answer that question. The activity orientation comes up first. I think that's why I've discussed it a lot here in this presentation. When I think of America, I think hard work. We've all heard of the American dream, which is built on a foundation of hard work and working hard for your goals. Is that something that I necessarily agree with or value at that same level in my own life? It depends. But when I think of the US culture, I think of how valuable work and work life seems to be in our overarching culture here in the US. So, for some research application, my research question asks, how do employees from collectivist cultures overcome challenges when communicating within US organizations that value independence and competition? So we know that the US has a very strong individualist culture. We're very independent, we like to compete, and self-motivation is a key factor in that. But when we have people, let's say, coming to work for a company here that is from a different country, founded in a collectivist culture, they communicate differently. They see life differently. They are wired differently as far as independence and competitiveness. They value teamwork more. They're more interdependent on the people around them to achieve goals and to get the job done. And they value harmony as well. So, how do people who come from collectivist cultures find ways to bridge that communication gap when they come here and are in the midst of our very strong individualist culture? Some key takeaways from this chapter and some research application. If this were to be turned into a project, I would want to use it to understand American cultural values. How do people from different cultures than ours bridge those communication gaps and not necessarily conform to the culture that we have here in America, but complement it with their own unique identities that they bring to the table. We look at the cultural framework, how the value orientation theory helps us to analyze dominant American traits. We looked at practical application, which is essential for understanding communication patterns and workplace dynamics here in the US and also in other cultures. And then for future research, this could be a foundation for studying cross-culture organizational communication and all of the details that lie within that. So that is all I have for today. Thank you.